Last Thursday, after the grisly discovery of Riley Doring's bashed body, Webb Park in Mayfield was cordoned off. Police and homicide detectives were everywhere searching for clues. It's now believed that the person responsible for the murder was only a short distance away at the Mayfield branch of the Commonwealth Bank.
It was about 1:10 a.m. on Thursday morning, which is within a short space of time of the murder taking place. An attempt was made to operate the keycard account of the deceased, and at 9:13 a.m. at the same bank, that's the Commonwealth Bank at Mayfield, an attempt was made and was successful, and a small amount of money was taken from his account.
Police say use of the keycard at the Mayfield branch tells them the murderer is probably someone from the suburb. They also believe it was the work of an experienced thief who has probably used this method before. Meanwhile, in another police investigation, Sydney detectives have been unable to find Tony Aliano, who's wanted in connection with a shooting in Chatswood on January 18. Aliano has been seen on several occasions in the Muswellbrook area and is thought to be responsible for a number of thefts. It's believed that Aliano may be hiding in rugged bushland in the area, as he's an experienced caver. Police have alerted locals to watch out for him and say that he may be travelling in a red Mazda Capella. Police were hoping that they'd be able to isolate an area to begin a search, but so far have drawn a blank.
Insurance companies estimate that 1 in every 4 stolen vehicle reports last year involved an element of fraud, and that cost almost $30 million. Today's seminar was a chance for police and insurance investigators to see if it was possible to detect more fraudulent claims sooner. Although the talks were secret, the investigators agreed that lack of liaison between police and insurance companies had caused needless duplication and oversights in the course of inquiries. Detective Vince Fallon made headlines last year for his work with Toronto Police in exposing a huge car fraud racket. He says car fraud is simply too easy.
We believe it's very easy in the manner of reporting to police and also the claims that are made upon the insurance companies. And
often the person planning to lodge a fraudulent claim needs no inside knowledge.
A lot of it in short term is talking around the hotels, clubs, and they believe it's a simple form, how to get away with the matter.
NRMA spokesman Gary Farthing says that at the other end of the spectrum there are those who know just how to take advantage of the system.
So I think there are professional people out there, whether they be working as a team or individually, that know the flaws, that have known of the flaws that insurance companies have had and the police have had, and I think they're now becoming more and more aware that we'll wake up to them.
Tears were never far away today as Gary Lynch relived the ordeal of Anita's brutal rape and murder and the subsequent trial and conviction of her killers. The object, to let student lawyers see the flip side of justice in action, here through the eyes of a grieving father.
I have read so many tragic cases of young people's lives being lost, and you hear about them for a brief moment and then they just fade out like a small candle dying.
Mr Lynch says he feels satisfied justice was adequately served by the life sentences imposed on Anita's 5 killers. Yes, he would support the reintroduction of the death sentence for such horrendous crimes, but he wouldn't lead any campaign. His job, he believes, to wring some purpose from Anita's destruction and to pass it on when he can.
Her light shines.
The Tooheys Country Cup has been played in a New South Wales country centre for the past 4 years, and this year Newcastle is the venue. The Cup visitors side will be captained by Enrique Rodriguez and include current Wallabies Tim Lane, Steve Lidbury, Ross Reynolds and Stephen James. The Newcastle side will be announced after next week's game against Sydney. New South Wales marketing manager Arthur McGill says they expect 2,000 spectators at the game and are aiming at those not usually interested in rugby union.
The whole exercise that we believe the rugby fraternity, the converted, for want of a better expression, would come anyway. We'd like to think that we'd get the unconverted along. Most probably people that have been interested in the other football codes.
Well, the visiting team looks very strong. Do you think it'll be a one-sided game?
I think that you'd find it'll be a very, very enjoyable game, and it won't be all, as you'd expect, one-sided. I think you'll find that the Newcastle selection 15 will respond to the type of game and the atmosphere, and I think you'll find some extremely entertaining type of football.
The Country Cup will be played here at Newcastle's No. 2 Sports Ground on the evening of May the 17th. It'll be preceded by coaching clinics for junior and senior players and a celebrity golf tournament the day before. Newcastle has a large boating fraternity, and with that has come a large incidence in maritime theft. A successful version of Maritime Neighbourhood Watch is already operating in Sydney and Nelson Bay. Police will introduce the scheme to Newcastle boat owners at Belmont tonight and Toronto tomorrow night. State Coordinator for Neighbourhood Watch Marine, Sergeant Terry Irvin, says it's not only for boat owners.
Oh, certainly. You don't have to be a boat owner to be a member of Neighbourhood Watch Marine. Even your position where you are in your home position close to water, quite obviously you can be a member of Neighbourhood Watch Marine and assist in trying to get these offenders that do a lot of steering in the waterways.
BHP is poised to proceed with its plan to purchase the colliery from Coal and Allied, but the proposal may be doomed if unions insist that retrenched miners be given employment preference. BHP owns the Stockton Borehole and Pacific Colliery and plans to amalgamate their operations while boosting output from West Wallsend No. 2. The company wants to increase the workforce at West Wallsend by transferring men from the amalgamated pits. But West Wallsend miners say it's not on, and that those retrenched by Coal and Allied at West Wallsend over the last year should be given their old jobs back. The mining unions have also expressed concern about the flow-on effects. But BHP says the issue is non-negotiable, and if the unions don't agree, West Wallsend No. 2 will close.
It's a condition of sale that we get this agreement, and in the event that we are unable to consummate this sale and rationalise the operations there as we plan, then unfortunately all the operations will have to be closed.
Why are you so absolute about that?
of plans to revive another building on Newcastle's foreshore. Local architect Brian Suter, a self-confessed devotee of the architectural talents of 19th century Newcastle architect Frederick Rankin, said the opportunity to revive the landmark Earl Gillam Bond store was especially inviting. The building is sadly neglected, a victim of termites, rust and decay, but Brian Suter sees it as a building worthy of restoration to its former glory as the pride of the harbour front.
It was designed 100 years ago, so it seems rather appropriate that in the Bicentennial year we should be recycling and restoring a centenary building.
Brian Suter's $2 million commitment to the Newcastle foreshore includes strong views on the future of the city skyline.
I'm a modern architect. I mean, the fact that we're going into an old building doesn't mean that I want to design old buildings. But I believe that the Newcastle skyline is fantastic, and I don't think it should be spoiled. That's not to say that there isn't room lower down the scale for some high-rise buildings.
Dairy Farmers Co-op factories service milk producers from Lismore to Albury. With an estimated value of $80 million and an annual turnover of $260 million, the co-op is an attractive business, regularly returning dividends to its 7,500 shareholders. The co-op is such an attractive prospect that the giant food company, Canfider, targeted it for takeover, beginning the war of the wets and the dries. In dairy co-op language, a wet shareholder is one who actually produces milk, while a dry is one who doesn't. The board of the dairy farmers believes control of the co-op should remain in the hands of the wet producers. The state government agrees, and last year introduced legislation requiring all dries to hand in their shares before October this year. That started months of arguments, offers and legal battles. Canfider offered $5 a share, knowing this would not be matched by the co-op. It secured options on more than 2 million shares and took dairy farmers to court in an attempt to stop today's meeting. On Wednesday, the New South Wales Supreme Court dismissed the case, leaving the way open for dairy farmers. Several hundred producers travelled to Newcastle to go through the formalities for a predictable result. Under the government legislation, only wets could vote. They overwhelmingly axed the dries. Many dry shareholders were angry, claiming their shares were worth closer to $12 than the $2 which they will now receive. General Manager of Dairy Farmers, Don Kinnersley, however, was making no apologies.
A member of a golf club pays a membership fee, perhaps he takes out debentures. When he gives up golf and leaves the club, they don't carve off a couple of acres of the golf club and sell it for him to return to him what he sees as his interest in the club. And the cooperative is the same thing.
The Hamilton office of the Department of Family and Community Services is coordinating relief work. A team of 10 people today responded to around 200 calls for help. The squad is assessing the needs of flood victims and is able to replace necessities such as mattresses, blankets, linen and clothing. Food and refrigerators can also be obtained for those people whose appliances were damaged in the deluge. The crisis number is 694699. The Hamilton office is also assessing the more extensive damage, such as structural problems with houses, and is passing this information on to a team in Sydney responsible for this kind of emergency relief. Most of today's calls came from people in the Windale, Gateshead, Lambton and Waratah areas. But in many other sections of the city, the clean-up was also on in earnest. As the creek levels dropped, residents were able to see the true extent of the damage. The welcome sunshine was perhaps the best morale booster many people trying to salvage their belongings could receive. The relief service at Hamilton hopes to provide trucks to take away ruined carpets and underlay before the mildew has a chance to set in.
kickboxing allows the participants to kick as well as punch. Standard 10-ounce boxing gloves are worn, as well as shin pads, groin guards, mouth guards and feet protectors. Contestants, however, can only punch and kick above the waist. Newcastle's kickboxers are all members of the Macquarie Karate Club, where they learn karate, kickboxing and street defence. Each bout is over 3 1.5-minute rounds, with each boxer having to throw at least 8 kicks per round or face losing points. In this bout, Newcastle's Mick King proved too good for Sydney's Mick Pettivoli in the super welterweight class. Newcastle also proved too good on the day, outgunning Sydney 3 wins to 2.
Only apprentices and bosses were on site at Rankin Park this afternoon. The tradesmen met at lunchtime and soon after went home for the rest of the day. The fight is not specifically with McCloy and Hutchison, the hospital building contractor. It's just that the guerrilla tactics had to start somewhere. McCloy's project manager, Len Griffin, understands that, but regrets the first strike action at Rankin Park outside national stoppages, especially when the contentious matters are already the subject of industry-wide negotiation.
It's certainly disappointing to us that men decided to take that action with, in reality, probably little effect. We can't change the industry, we're not in a position to change the industry by agreeing to any of these demands other than what the industry as a whole through the Arbitration Industrial Commission would sanction.
The building trades group of unions includes the building workers, plasterers, painters, plumbers and the FEDFA. And the metal workers are helping out in this particular campaign. Terry Maudsley is secretary of the union group.
Unless some action is taken, unless there's something put into the discussions, they'll go on forever and there'll be no decision. They've been running now for some considerable time, and the unions have reached the point of where we're not prepared to wait any longer for prolonged discussions to eventually arrive at a decision. We're saying we're taking this action to ensure that something comes out of those discussions, and very quickly.
Further stoppages are expected at the various site meetings this week and at the new Wallsend shopping centre next Tuesday.
Officers Reid and McKendry received the State Superintendent's Commendation for Bravery for a rescue they carried out in 1981. The two men made a hazardous trip in a small boat in wild seas to assist an ill seaman in a ship moored 11 kilometres off the coast. While scrambling aboard on a rope ladder, the men were in danger of being crushed between their tender and the ship. The two paramedics' daring deed saved the seaman's life. The dinner brought together ambulance personnel from throughout the region to toast the award winners and farewell those leaving. Retiring Assistant Regional Superintendent Arthur McLennan was honoured for his 36 years of work. Additionally, 13 officers were presented with national medals, marking their 15th year with the service.
Piper Matthew Rigby from Cardiff High School signalled the start of the festival, in which 15 schools took part. The musical items were selected for the concert over 2 days of auditioning by 3 adjudicators. The idea is to showcase the best on offer from secondary school music students. Jazz groups, rock bands and choral groups were all included, along with concert bands such as this one from Singleton High School. The music festival has been held each year since 1959. And is always popular with crowds of people who turn out to listen.
Meanwhile, in City Hall last night, the Newcastle Combined Churches launched its Bicentennial event, a forum called Home, the Heartbeat of a Nation. 7 denominations have joined the project, which is designed to make the community aware of the spiritual and moral values of a good home life. Former ABC newsreader, the legendary James Dibble, gave the opening address. The Waratah Girls Choir entertained the crowds. The 3 days of seminars, lectures and discussion groups will look at marriage, children and skills which enhance family life. It'll conclude tomorrow night with an ecumenical service at Christchurch Cathedral. Expressed its bottom line. It must be able to man up West Wallsend No. 2 with its own current employees from a rationalisation of the combined Pacific and Stockton borehole collieries. The unions are demanding that the award is applied and that those retrenched from the Westy No. 2 pit are taken back on first. General Manager of BHP Collieries, Jim Lewis, stressed late today that if the unions don't agree by midday Friday, application will be made to the Resources Minister to close down the Stockton borehole and the Pacific collieries.
Well, we've been saying that in the last couple of months, whilst we've been trying to persuade them that this is in fact what has to happen. The time has now come when the crunch point, as it were, has arrived, and that's next Friday.
The unions say that they've put a proposition to you that will solve this whole problem and that you haven't considered that proposition properly.
Well, the proposition involves essentially taking on the retrenched West Wallsend people and retiring people in our own organisation in a voluntary way. It has been considered, it was considered in detail, it was part of the material that we presented to the Coal Industry Tribunal, and he concluded, as we had, that it was not a workable or an economic possibility.
Miners Federation spokesman Jeff Brown says a Northern Mining Union combined committee meeting will be held on Monday. A decision will probably be made then to hold an aggregate meeting of all miners sometime next week. The present owner of West Wallsend No. 2, Coal and Allied, has already said the colliery will close if the BHP purchase plan falls through. And BHP says the unions should consider that would mean the 200 miners retrenched from Westy No. 2 recently, which the unions wanted to re-employ first, will have no hope whatsoever of getting another mining job.
The Australasian Yamaha titles attracted 170 entries, all from New South Wales. It's the first time a competition of this calibre has been conducted on the recently upgraded circuit. The club has done away with the high-speed sweep into the straight, as well as lengthening the straight and resurfacing the track. The work cost $30,000, 99% of that raised by the local club members. Amongst the competitors today were Australian champions Greg Smith and Jim Courtney, and top locals Jeff Primmer and Wayne Russell. Speeds of up to 100 kilometres an hour were reached during the day as drivers battled it out in the 8 classes of racing.